Welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gordon. We are the co-founders of this podcast and recent graduates of Concordia University's Chicago's doctoral program in leadership in health and human performance. We decided to take our experiences, knowledge, and academic training from our doctoral journey and start this podcast, sharing our voices on topics related to wellness, healthy aging, and purposeful living. Dr. Gordon brings to our discussions a background in psychology and research focused on exercise motivation with older adult athletes. She is a freelance writer for Outside Interactive, writing for Triathlon magazine, as well as a published poet, photographer, and multi-sport enthusiast. Dr. Ward is the founder and owner of No Excuses LLC, a leading health and wellness coaching company. With over 25 years of combined experience in wellness, leadership, and motivational coaching, including 6 years of dedicated service in the United States Air Force. She brings her expertise and discipline to her mission. Dr. Ward's research focuses on enhancing the quality of life and increasing longevity in aging adults. We are both passionate advocates for helping others thrive towards better health and value connecting deeply with our audiences. We strive to empower individuals to take a charge of their health, making lasting changes and transform their lives from the inside out. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. All information and opinions expressed in this podcast are for the general purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Hello, and welcome back to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gordon. And if you see, we have a special guest today. Dr. Gordon, could you please share with us who our special guest is?
Yes, so welcome to episode 14. Amazing.
Hey, 14.
I know. I mean, we started this journey over 3 months ago. Pretty incredible. So today we're going to talk about fit beyond self.
Oof.
And each week we try to frame our discussions within a health and human performance perspective. So Dr. Ward and I, if you've listened to our past episodes, you know that we're passionate advocates for encouraging healthy aging, and we like to use this platform to educate about mental, physical, and social emotional health. So based on our experiences as former doctoral students. But today we wanted to take a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm going to introduce our guest in 1 second, but we just wanted to we want to broaden our lens, and we want to look at health promotion and wellness and human performance beyond ourselves. We want to consider how our personal choices may impact our communities and each other. And this kind of way of viewing fitness really was brought to us through our guest, Joe Simonetta. And so we wanted to dive into this a little bit with him today. We're so happy you're here, Joe.
Yes,
Good to be. Good. Yeah, thanks. Good to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I've known you for a little over a year now, and you impress me with your athleticism and just your philosophy on life. So I'm super excited to have this conversation today. So Joe is a lifelong athlete and a triathlete and an author and a speaker and a global advocate for a more sustainable, ethical, and a unified world. His educational background is impressive. He has a degree from business in business from PENN State University, architecture from the University of Colorado, and divinity from Harvard University. He has over 4 decades of leadership experience with nonprofits, corporate enterprise, and entrepreneurial ventures. He has served as a senior editor of the World Business Academy, authored 11 books, and delivered a widely viewed TED Talk, which is a goal of Marilyn's and mine one day.
Yes.
So maybe you can guide us one day on the principles that sustain life and civilization. His philosophy, the architecture of life, called Taoism, That L is important, which I want to have some questions for you. Embodies the truth of oneness, recognizing that individual flourishing and collective progress are inseparable. And I love that. I love your philosophy, and I'm so excited to talk about it. I just want to mention it's really important. He just got the gold medal at the USA Triathlon Nationals as a senior triathlete. He got it in 2024. And I believe you started competing in your late 70s as a triathlete. So I want to
80. When I was 80, yeah, actually it was
80. So, I mean, congratulations on that. You're an inspiration, and we're happy to have you here. I also want to just briefly mention that you and Marilyn both share the honor of being in the military. So I thank you both for your service.
former military, yeah.
Thank you.
Joe was an army an officer in the Army, and as you know, Marilyn was in the Air Force. So
Oh, great, nice.
yeah.
All right.
So there we are. That's I hope I did that. Did you justice there? Did I forget anything?
No, that was fine. You said the USA Triathlon was actually the United States National Senior Games.
Oh, senior games. Okay.
Oh.
Senior
Okay.
Games. Yeah.
Which is an even bigger venue. There's thousands of athletes that go to the senior games every year.
Yeah, like in the Senior Games, there's many events, not just the
Mhm.
triathlon, and there's over 12,000 participants in the Senior Games. This year they were in Des Moines, Iowa. And in the USA Triathlon, sprint and Olympic championships, last year they were in Atlantic City. That's just triathlon, but there's so many. There were like 3,000 triathletes in Atlantic City. And the one this year in Milwaukee, they had the Olympic triathlon, which is twice the distance of the sprint. And the sprint, which was supposed to be the next day, got canceled out completely this year because of weather.
Oh, no.
Which was really bad news for all that went. And I was going to go to that, but I really couldn't afford the time or the expense, and I didn't go. And if I had gone, it would have been canceled. So
I had seen that on the multisport Facebook page about it being canceled, and I know that's got to be so disappointing. It's such a hard call for a race director or an event to do that, but safety first always.
and a great disappointment to people who have prepared for it,
Right.
show up and have spent a lot of money to get there, and then it gets canceled. Yeah, it's true.
My friend and previous colleague trained for the Augusta last year, and it was his first. And me and our other colleague, or my old boss, we had done it the year before, a couple of years before, and so we were so excited for him. And then the hurricane came, and it shut it down, and he was so disappointed. But I still see him. We're friends on the Apple Watch. He's training again, so I'm assuming he is going to do it again. So. Because they usually just postpone it, like you get to keep your race registration and they'll postpone it. So we'll see.
Was the one in Augusta, was that a triathlon too?
Yes, it was a half Ironman.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, Joe, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, because we also like to have discussions in terms of perspectives on successful aging. So, I mean, how did you get to wanting to do a triathlon at age 80? And what led you to that point?
Well, I've always played sports. I think since I was about 5 years old, I've never stopped playing sports, and I've always liked it. And, all kinds of sports. When I went to Penn State as an undergraduate, I played 2 varsity sports, soccer and tennis. And, for my fraternity, I played everything. Basketball, I quarterbacked the football team. I won the Penn State racquetball championship. I wrestled, I swam, everything. I always had sort of the gift. I could pick up sports pretty easily because I have really good coordination, and I have very big hands for my size, so I can throw and catch a football, everything. And I liked it. I just liked it. I just like playing. And so through my life, which is very unusual, I've been in a lot of different endeavors and fields, and I've always kept running or played racquetball or tennis. And then early in my life, I was a tennis professional. That's what brought me to Florida. Maryland. That's what brought me to Sarasota, actually,
Yeah.
1970.
Oh,
I,
my.
I started the tennis program at Palm Air in Sarasota, 1970.
Oh,
Started the first kids' summer tennis camps in Sarasota, summer of 1971. And I had a lot of kids coming to my camp from Bradenton. So the Bradenton people wanted me. So they got me to go to the Bradenton Country Club. So I went there for a couple of years. And I got out of it early. I knew early in my life I didn't want to just keep doing tennis and teaching tennis.
right.
Great to do that, but I just have more of a curiosity about life, got into a lot of other things. But later on, at a couple of different times, I was the director of tennis at the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort on Longboat Key, which became the #1 tennis resort in the country. I changed a number of the programs there. We had 21 courts, all hard courts. We changed 11 into soft courts. I created a new design center. I hired a whole new staff. We had all new uniforms, new programs. And then also I was at Innisbrook up in Tarpon Springs. If you're familiar with Innisbrook, I was the director of tennis there another time. So, I did do tennis. But anyway, I've done these sports to get back to the original question. How did I get to 80 and still be able to run around, basically? Well, I got there because I continued running around.
Right.
I never stopped. I used to run 6 miles a day in Sarasota. I used to run Siesta Key Beach from one end to the other. I used to run 6, 7 days, as I said, 6, 7 days a week. You can't do that now when you're older. You can't run 6, 7 days a week when you're older because you need recovery days. And now in my training, I work out, then I take a recovery day. I work out, I take a recovery day.
Can I ask you one quick question, Joe?
Yeah, just stop me at any time.
Okay, you said something very interesting. You said I never stopped. So last week in our was it last week or the week before? I think it was 2 episodes ago. We had our colleague on from school, Dr. Tahir, and he did a research study with older adults who had mild to moderate depression, and he asked them about their physical activity throughout their life. And these were people who were not highly, but were physically active in their younger years of their life. And then something happened along the way, work, raising children, maybe got injured. Something happened along the way where they fell out of love with it. And they let it go. And they subsequently, as he, studied it, they also are, have mild to moderate depression that, he made that connection in his research. So I'm curious, when you say you never stop, is it good fortune? Are you just the type of person that you are motivated to just keep going through things? Like, why did it stay important to you up to this point in time?
It's just, how one chooses to live their lifestyle. It's just their lifestyle. For me, it's an aspect of my lifestyle. It's something I enjoy doing. I enjoy the exhilaration of sports and participation in competition and just working out. And I've always made time for it. It's very easy, as you said accurately, to get off track for one reason or another, an illness or too many responsibilities at home or just one thing or another. So, I think when it comes down to doing sports and achieving in sports, but especially doing it, you don't have to win the gold medal. It's all mental. If someone would say to me, like even yesterday at my son's soccer practice, one of the mothers congratulated me, and anybody can do it. It's not physical, it's mental.
Okay.
It's mental for everything. Yeah? First, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision that you want to do something. And then after you make a decision, whether it's a triathlon or it's writing a book, you have to have a strategy. And then you have to have discipline. So if you make a decision, you have a strategy, you have a discipline and execute, you can achieve almost anything. And so it's not like you're anything special. if you're special in anything, it's just that you made a decision and you're disciplined and you did it. It really comes down to that. So if you want to respond to that, you can, and we can get back to your original question about.
No, Marilyn, how do you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say how did you juggle all of that? The physical fitness, your academic career, you're going to school and on top of your career and family. But you kind of answered that with, discipline and the strategies but it's just fascinating to see that through it all, you still like physical fitness is a priority for you. So it just sat at more of the top of the list. Was it hard to juggle all of that?
Another thing I think you have to do is to be efficient with your time, how you spend your time. You have to be organized. I have a natural sense of order, which has enabled me to do a lot of things in life in a lot of different fields, a lot of different disciplines. So you fit it in. If it's important to you, it has to first be important to you. If it's important to you,
right,
you fit it in. And now, much of my life I was single, and now I've been married for 16 years, and as I mentioned, I have a son 12 and a daughter 9, and it's a very, very busy life. Running them to soccer practice, gymnastics, to school, taking care of things at home, and working and writing, and sports. For me, triathlon training. But you can do it, if you really want to do it. Again, I think it's mostly mental.
Yeah. Oh, and we share that quite often on here about the mental, everything about it, the mental wellness, mental health, and just, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. And I love that. I love you say, just do it. If you're just going to do it, like it's, I feel like I'm listening to bits and pieces of my own story here. And I'm like, oh, I love it. Like,
it's not to say that it's easy.
right.
It's not easy. There is an element of work involved in doing it. Now, some people say, well, I enjoy it. Yeah, but you have to work too. If you want something, if you want anything in life, you have to work for it. That's just the nature of life. Nothing. It's not easy.
But
you're saying something, Sarah.
Sure. But do you think if you go back to when you started to do sports in your earlier years in life, I mean, you had to have had positive experiences with it, right? Or do you think, because, like my study looked at motivation, exercise motivations. And I found a pattern with the older triathletes in my study that, there was these patterns of intrinsic motivation. People enjoy doing triathlon, enjoy being physically active, have fun with it. So I just think it's an interesting question. And then maybe it's a little bit of a philosophical question. Like, is your journey because you're wired that way? You were born that way and you had good luck with it and you have the mental focus and positive, attitudes towards it all. It's interesting to me how somebody, and at your age, when you look at your peers, you really are an exception, and a wonderful exception. And then, we need more people like you. But what would you say to people, like, let's say maybe if our listeners are a little bit younger and they're in their 30s or 40s, what would you say to them to get to 80 and beyond and have such good physical fitness? Unless you're just wired that way, what do you say to people?
Well, it's a combination, I think, of being wired that way, genetics and environment and how you're brought up. I'm the son of an immigrant.
Okay.
My father was born in Italy and came through Ellis Island. He was a blue collar worker with an 8th grade education.
Okay.
And had 3 sons. He was very smart, but he had to go to work. My older brother went to West Point, United States Military Academy. My younger brother has an MBA from Vanderbilt, and retired as vice president with Pepsi. And I've done a whole lot of things in life. That comes from being the son of an immigrant. And we grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, not far from the Bethlehem steel mills. I say sometimes I grew up in the shadows of the blast furnaces of the Bethlehem steel. And all around us, because we lived on the south side of the town, that's where all the steel workers lived. On the north side of town were the white collar workers. There's a river that's separated, the Lehigh River. Lehigh University is in Bethlehem.
Right.
And the kids around me, my friends, we all played sports. We played basketball, football, baseball. That's how we did. When I was about 12 years old, one of my uncles, my father was one of 9, my mother was one of 13. And one of my uncles gave me a tennis racket. My Uncle Santo. I don't know where he got the tennis racket. It was nobody played tennis in our family. And nobody on the south side of Bethlehem, the steelworks were, played tennis. And I took the tennis racket and went up to the playground, Packer School, and hit balls against the wall. I thought, this is fun. This was when I was like 12. And then I took the racket to the city tennis courts, which were on an island between the north side and the south side of town. And now I was exposed to the more upper class people in Bethlehem, tennis players dressed in white, playing on red clay courts. And I had some athletic ability already, and I just sat there and watched, and it triggered a couple of my genetic instincts. One was just, and propensities. One was my ability to play sports, and I watched and I learned just from watching. I didn't have any lessons like kids going to the country club.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that it triggered, I was taken by the ambiance of the setting, the beauty, the people dressed in white, playing tennis. Now, which later on I would become an architect and a designer. And so that was part of my early programming. From that background, you played Little League baseball in those days, and you played basketball, and I played tennis in high school, and I made the high school tennis team. And so it just continued through the years. And then in college at Penn State, I played every sport imaginable. I wasn't a great student at Penn State. I was a terrible student because I was not interested in academics. I mean, I hadn't matured to that point. Now, later on, I would get a master's degree in architecture at University of Colorado and be the top student in the class and the top designer. I'd get a master's from Harvard. But at that time, I really wasn't a good student, but I played a lot of sports. And so sports was always something that was just part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And back through all the years, and leading up to the first triathlon, I think you and I might have had a little bit of this conversation before. It was late, and you stop me and ask any questions at any time.
Sure. No, it's your story is so interesting.
I love it.
Late 2022, I was looking at the website for the National Senior Games, just out of curiosity. And I said, this is interesting, because I played and I won the racquetball senior games in Sarasota a couple of years before that. And because I was playing a lot of racquetball. I played at Penn State, I played a lot of racquetball. I played squash, racquetball, and tennis, all the racket sports. When I was looking at the website, I was thinking, maybe I can compete in something. So I went through all the sports. I said, triathlon, that looks interesting.
The hardest one.
Yeah, I could have played racquetball, I could have played tennis, I could ran. So I looked at my age division, and I looked at the times for the swim, bike, and run. And I said, I think I can do that. So I trained a little bit, and at the end of 22 and the beginning of 23, and you have to get into the nationals, you have to win a state championship in that event. And I didn't win a state championship, but they opened the event sometime around March of 23. And I saw that, so I entered. So I trained because it was in July. So I trained for 5-6 months or so and read everything I could about the triathlon. Not only the swimming and the biking and the running, but the transitions between, T1 between the swim and the bike, and T2 between the bike and the run. And so I show up in Pittsburgh. I fly to Atlanta, go to Pittsburgh, pick up a rental bike, which was the wrong kind of bike because I didn't know anything. I didn't not know anything, but I didn't know enough. I got a bike that was not really a road bike. It wasn't a triathlon bike, not a tri bike, wasn't even a road bike.
Oh, no.
So I rent the bike. I'm at the hotel. The next morning, I'm at the breakfast bar with these guys that are going to be in the triathlon. They're saying, "This is your first triathlon? How did you get into this thing?" Because you're not supposed to get into it.
Right.
I remember when I first met you, you said something to me, and it's very telling about your personality too. You said, the competition is perhaps getting slower, but you were determined to get faster.
Yeah. And I still
Because we know as we age, we do have age-related decline, but we also know physical activity can help reverse that to a certain degree. But your mindset, and it's really why we wanted to have you on this show, to inspire other people that aging can be filled with great health and fun, through physical activity. And your mindset was, and I remember it stuck with me when I first had a conversation with you about a year ago. You're like, you were challenging yourself to consider how you can actually get, faster and beat the champion. So
right.
it was interesting. I remember that. So
Like keep raising the bar, right? Like you want to keep
why not, right?
bar. Yeah.
And
Be
I
the trendsetter.
Yeah, and when you try to do that, you're going to have setbacks because we all have setbacks in life. It's normal. Yeah. So it becomes another exercise in how to deal with setbacks, which everyone can benefit from just having a sense that setbacks are going to happen. And I teach my children this. Right. And you just have to deal with it. It's part of life. So in that triathlon, 2023 in Pittsburgh, in the morning of the triathlon, we go to swim. All these people were in wetsuits. And I didn't understand why people were in wetsuits because I didn't have a wetsuit. And, it took me a couple of years to realize they swim faster in wetsuits. Only it's not so much about keeping you warm, but you swim fast. But I didn't know that. So we're lined up. There's two groups because it goes from 50 years old up to 85. And the first group went out 50 to about 60, 65. And then the next group, 65 to 85. And we're lined up in the lake with a rope in front of us, and they drop the rope and the swim starts. And it's only 400 meters, which is no big deal. Typically, it's 750 meters, which is a half mile. And I could swim 400 meters easily. But I got so excited when they dropped the rope. All these guys took off, guys much younger than me. I thought I could keep up with them. So I took off swimming, and it was a disaster. I swam out about maybe 50 yards. I couldn't breathe.
Oh, so you're gasping for air. That adrenaline rush. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I went too fast. I went beyond my pace, which is a good lesson for life.
Right.
You don't want to go beyond your pace. Stay within your pace. So I had to backstroke, side stroke, and what's the other stroke when you're like a frog?
Breaststroke.
Breaststroke. So I'm gasping and I'm saying to myself, what is happening to me? I couldn't believe it. I said, you are such an idiot. You think you can come out here and compete with these guys that have been doing this for years and years and years and have all this equipment and fancy bikes and everything. And I'm in the water. I'm about one of the last ones out of the water that the group behind me, which were women, passed me. And so I get out of the water, and I'm kind of semi-despondent, and I'm thinking, you blew this, you know. And I was really disappointed because I thought I would do well. So I get on the bike and I do the 12.4 miles on the bike, take the helmet off and start running. And I just, you know, I'll finish the triathlon. And you had to do these 2 loops to do the 3.1 miles. Each one was about a mile and a half. So I'm doing the first loop and going out near the turn, coming back. And I see this guy pass me who won the triathlon the year before. I said, wait a second. I'm still in this thing.
I remember the story. Yeah, go ahead.
Said, I can catch him. So I ran right by him. And then I ran by another guy who was actually in front of him, Rob Norris, who finished behind me in Des Moines. And I ended it, and they had this scoreboard, electronic scoreboard. My name came up, and I talked to this guy from Alabama, Richard Snow, who was in the age group before me, who I got to be friends with. And he said, you may have won that. I said, well, their times haven't come up yet. And I didn't realize that, well, the guys that were behind me, I said, their times haven't come up. And there was a woman with her phone checking. I said, can you tell me, how did I do? And she said, you won the gold medal. That's incredible. So I learned a whole lot, you know, from that experience. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
First of all, just hang on.
I was gonna say, never give up, right? If you would have just given up thinking that after the swim,
right.
you know, and that we see people do that too often. So, gosh, like it's getting goosebumps.
So let me ask you this. So I'm gonna broaden the conversation just a little bit. Obviously, we're so inspired by your athleticism, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, because we want people to watch this episode and realize that physical fitness can be part of your life, you know, throughout your life, you know, in terms of health promotion and human performance. But the topic of today, we want to talk about fit beyond ourselves. And the 3 of us know, because we're all triathletes, we know that the triathlon community is such a beautiful, wonderful community, such camaraderie. People really want the best for each other. It's a great positive environment. The energy's usually, you know, in general, it's a very positive environment. But we're gonna, as we talk about fit beyond self, and we go into your philosophy on your 7 words that are, you know, that are really important words for us to live by, which I would love for you to talk about. And we talk about sense of community and personal responsibility, the choices we make to live healthy lives, and how that impacts our communities beyond triathlon, because that's kind of a unique, you know, microcosm of the world. I don't know if I said that word correctly, but share with us your philosophy on why it matters. Why do we need to think beyond ourselves? Like, you know, our own personal goals, our own physical health. Why do we need to think about others in that, you know, mindset?
Now we get into the heavy stuff.
Sorry. And I didn't mean to just like, you know, but I thought I really want to make sure we have time, because, you know, we try to stay within 45, 50 minutes. We might go a tad longer today, because this conversation is really valuable.
No, I'm just kidding. You know? It's not necessarily heavy stuff, but can I give you a little
Go for it. Give us your TED Talk.
Let me tell you, I have to give you some background to understand why I even got to this point. To have this understanding, to even have an interest in having this understanding. You know, when I was younger, in my 20s, I was really disturbed by the suffering that I saw in the world. I said to myself, I'm going to do something about this. I had no idea what I was going to do about it. And that was the end of it, you know. When I was a tennis pro at Palmyra in Sarasota, when I was about 28, I had a recurring dream. I haven't told this story in a minute. I'll tell it on the pod. This is the first time that anyone publicly has heard the story. but it had a big impact on my life. In the dream, there would be this big ball, and there'd be some little thing nudging the ball, big ball, and something little nudging the ball. The thing about the dream is I had it night after night, the same dream.
Hmm.
And it said, and I would hear the voice, and this voice said, "You are responsible." I said, that's very strange. And to have it night after night, I would hear it during the day, this voice. One day I was giving a tennis lesson. I'm giving a tennis lesson, and I hear this voice over from the side, "You are responsible." And I turned around. Of course, there's nobody there. And I was
Okay.
driving down the road, DeSoto Road, I think, in Sarasota, next to Palmyra Country Club, and I had a sports car, 1953 MG TD, a little classic sports car with the top down. I'm driving down this country road. This is like 1971. And I hear this voice. It says, "You are responsible."
Hmm.
So I pull the car over to the side of the road on the grass. I turned the car off and I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And then I
Did you
drove
know what it
away.
was? Did you know what it was?
I know now.
Okay,
But
interesting. I'll do it. But you just said whatever it is. Okay, I'll do it. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, keep
but
going.
after I said that, I never had the dream again. I never heard the voice again. I said, after I agreed to do it, I said, "I'll do it."
You
So
took
I
it.
go on, you know, I can, that's one thing in my life that I cannot explain. And,
Wow.
but anyway, I go on, I live this very unusual life with all these experiences, all these fields, from military to sports to architecture to religion to politics to writing to real estate development, running for Congress twice. He was even nominated for the United States presidency in 1992 at the Democratic Party National Convention in New York. I wasn't there. I was at Harvard at the time. Someone told me later, gave me a video of it. But so I have all these experiences. And when having all these experiences, it seemed like I would be grabbed by the neck and said, "Okay, you learned that. Now get over here, learn this." I learned that, and over here in this field. Then I learned this in this field. And it wasn't like really deliberate on my part. It was just a sort of this natural progression going through all these different learning experiences. It's partially also from the fact that early in my life, I said, I don't want to be anything. I just want to be. I remember saying that to myself. I just
Wow.
want to be. And in that beingness, and by 1983, after I tuned in what's happened with the world, it occurred to me that humanity had created a destructive and unsustainable momentum that must be arrested and reversed if we're going to sustain humanity, advance our civilization, and succeed as a species. And I was in the field of architecture at that time. I was in Los Angeles.
Joe, will you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, sure.
It's okay, Marilyn. We're unplugged.
Let me
Real
get her.
life. This is real
It's okay
life.
with it.
Let's
Sure.
go ahead and say that for our listeners one more time, because it's really
It was
important.
1983. I was 40 years old.
Okay.
And after observing what humanity is doing to itself and the planet, it occurred to me, it was crystal clear that humanity had created a destructive and unsustainable momentum that must be arrested and reversed.
Okay.
We're going to sustain humanity, advance our civilization, and succeed as a species. So I was actually in the executive MBA program at UCLA, and I was offered a really good job. I had a job, but I was offered a job right next to UCLA in architecture, a management job. And I refused it because I said, I have to do something. So I sold my Mercedes, and I had another sports car at that time. I sold them both, sold all my furniture, and I bought a used truck and a camper, a new camper that went on the back of the truck. Very nice camper. I was going to go to Washington and get involved with some friends and do something. I didn't know what I was going to do, but instead I decided I'd write a book. So I wrote my first book. I started driving to Sarasota, Florida. My brother was living. And I started writing in the back of the book, and I wrote my first book, which was called The Heroes Are Us. Subtitle, a call to rescue our world.
Okay.
And I self-published it in 1985. And then I moved back to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, my hometown. I hadn't lived there for 15 years. And I was there a couple of weeks, and people were talking to me about the right-wing and incumbent congressman. And I don't know why. And I said, well, I think I'll run for Congress. This was like, I think I'll do a triathlon. But this was like, I woke up after being in Bethlehem for 2 days, lying in bed. I said, I'm going to run for Congress. I hadn't been there for 15 years, had zero name recognition. And I started this campaign. And 12 months later, I won the Democratic Party nomination to run for Congress in Pennsylvania's 15th congressional district against a fourth-term incumbent who had endless money, and I didn't have any money to spend. Ended up only spending $50,000. Could you imagine, on a congressional campaign? And I went door to door that summer. I knocked on 20,000 doors, just going door to door. After I won the nomination, I think I mentioned that. Then I went door to door, but I lost. I got 43% of the vote, and and I had a lot of interesting experiences, including going to Washington. I met with Joe Biden. He was a senator then. I spent an hour with him. We really hit it off. He was going to come and campaign for me, but he got held up in the Senate. There was this event scheduled. But anyway, it went on, and I lost. And then I we're going to be way over time, but I moved to New Zealand after that, and to the South Island in New Zealand. I'd read about a guy, Dick Roberts, who's from England. He's a biologist. He bought this property on the South Island of New Zealand outside of Nelson, which is the north part of New Zealand, with all these microclimates. And he had an experimental tree farm.
Joe, can I say one thing? Don't worry about the time. You go on with the story. Let us know. I'm curious to know how what it was. You said now when you stopped the car and you said, I have to do this. So go ahead and don't worry about the time. It's an interesting story.
Okay. So Dick Roberts picks me up at the airport in Nelson, and we drive to outside of Nelson. He owned all this land, and drove past his house about 100 meters up the hill, and there was this tin hut, 8 feet by 12 feet. 8 feet by 12 feet. Yeah, 8 feet by 12 feet. 8 feet wide, 12 feet long. And it just had a mattress on the floor. And I put my suitcase there, and that's where I was going to stay. And his house was down the hill. And that's where the bathroom was, and we had meals down there. But the next day I started building, and I did everything. Put in windows, doors, carpet, wood burning stove. I built all the furniture, and I would write at night. I wrote a book called Russell, Alexander, and John, which I eventually rewrote. It's called Boda, Kara, Brahm. This is a story of personal and planetary change. All these stories are preludes. All these books are preludes to the Taoism, this book, Taoism, the latest book. 7 words that can change the world. That's the Harvard experience. I have to tell you about that. That's an amazing story. This one, interconnected, interrelated, interdependent world. This one, gingerbread horse rocket, Melon Ball Express. And this one, be healthy, be kind, respect the environment, which are similar to Taoism. These books, my concept on these was that I wanted to do an adult book that looked like a kid's book. So these are picture books. We have
Good idea.
like pictures in them like that. And but
so all
it's an
these
adult. adult message.
So all these world experiences and all the different things where you were led to once you had that kind of realization, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't know what it is yet, but
So here's how
I moved you towards what?
well, I eventually got to this, but there's a
That's
couple
right.
important stops, this is the most recent. When I came back from New Zealand, I got a job in Sarasota and Longboat Key, the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort. Really good job, a very desirable job for anybody in the tennis industry. But I always had these concerns, state of the world. So I started a 501c3 nonprofit in Sarasota called Pro Earth. Pro Earth was this was the brochure for Pro Earth, and if you can see it, Pro Earth, yeah, that's the brochure.
Okay.
It was to communicate to people, and this was 1989. This is 36 years ago. 1989, I wanted to communicate to people not global environmental problems, but the consequence of the interaction of global environmental problems, which are called multi-hazards, which we're seeing today, multi-hazards, where an ordinary weather event becomes a disaster. And I knew way back that it was coming. And, so I resigned from the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort, and I become the executive director of this nonprofit for no money and had a good paying job. And I've done that a number of times. I just leave things and do what I'm kind of driven to do. And then I spoke to one of the members on the board, who was a professor, and I said, I really need to learn more. And he suggested Yale Divinity School. And I interviewed there in 1990 and thought maybe I can get in the following year. And they took me right away, got into Yale without any problem whatsoever. And I went up to Yale and I did a year at Yale. And I was going to leave Yale after a year because I wanted to study religion. I wanted to study world religions because, it occurred to me that our belief systems are behind everything. And at Yale, they looked at the world too narrowly for me, looked at the world through the lens of Christianity. And then I was almost 50 years old as well. I've had these experiences, and I had more experiences than most of the professors. And so I was going to drop out. But at Yale, I was in the environmental group at Yale Divinity, and I used to run with the professor, Richard Fern, who was the head of the environmental group and Yale Law School graduate, and then Yale Divinity School graduate, and the ethics professor. And we used to run a lot. We were good friends. And we would talk religion and philosophy when we're running. And he said, you think like a Unitarian Universalist. I said, what is that? I don't even know what a Unitarian Universalist, UU is. And just as he said that, we ran by, there was so much serendipity and synchronicity in my life. We ran by the UU church, just as he said that. And outside was this marquee with the name of the pastor. So that night I called the pastor, it was a woman, and she was graduating from Harvard. And I said, tell me about UUs. So she patiently told me about it. I said, that's interesting. I could be a minister in that religion. And so I said, instead of dropping out of Yale, I said, I'm going to apply to Harvard. This was the spring of 91. So I call Harvard Divinity School. And I said, could I transfer from? They said, yeah, but you have 3 days. You have 3 days before applications must be in. They close it. And you have a huge essay to write and other essays, and you have to send your financial recommendations and finances and everything else, transcripts. And I'm not deterred easily. So my response was, what's the essay question? What's the essay? And I said, okay, send me the application. I got everything back in 2 days. Talk about being efficient and organized. And I got accepted. into Harvard Divinity School. It was the fastest acceptance in the history of the school. So I go up there and I go to school, for 2 years, because you have to do 3 years total. You took the year at Yale for the professional degree, the Master of Divinity. And in the fall of the last year, you meet with other candidates, about 12 in your group, about your senior thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And you sat in a square around these tables, and you had to stand up and say what your thesis was going to be on. And you guys have been through this, I'm sure, something like it. And, so I stand up and I say, I'm going to write my thesis about the need for a new world belief system. And everyone looked at me like, what? Who do you think you are?
I feel like you have no fear factor. You've no fear factor.
Well, I don't know about that as much as anybody. It just seemed pretty normal to me. And so in my last year at Harvard, I wrote a book called One, A Third Millennium Belief System. And I used excerpts from it to write my thesis. And I finished my thesis maybe the first of all of the students, because I was working on this book the last year. And I turned it in, and I was getting ready, and I was studying for other final exams and other final papers, and I get a phone call. And the thesis professor says, this paper is unacceptable. You're not going to graduate. Well, actually, he called me in to a meeting, and he didn't tell me then. He called me into a meeting in his office, and he and another professor were there. And then they told me that this is unacceptable. Because if you want to write a paper like this, you have to quote other people who think like you. And they could have told me that a long time ago, because the other professor was actually my advisor, my thesis advisor. And they said, if you want to write a paper, you have to read, and they had a list of books. They had about 20 books. They had the sheet. They said, you have to read these books. And she said, you can come back next year if you want to try again. And I really felt like I got blindsided.
Mm-hmm.
I said, can I see that list? And I looked at the list. I said, I'll read those books now and submit another paper now. And they looked at each other like, there's like 3 weeks left of school. And they said, well, if you want to try. So I went right to the library. I got all these books. I go home and I start skimming those books. Bam. I wrote another thesis, and I did my other papers and final exams. And then I get a phone call from the professor, and he says, we read your new paper. He says, we'll accept it. You can graduate with your class. So I graduated. It was incredible. And so that was, the start of writing like a new world belief system, which led to another book. So that book eventually became One, the third millennium belief system. Then it became the simple truth. Eventually, it became from Harvard Divinity, from a World War II housing project where I was born, to Harvard Divinity School. Then it became the simple truth. And in 2000, so I had this book, it's over on the shelf, called The Simple Truth. I was asked by the Natural Law Party, which is one of the third parties, to be their nominee for the United States Senate from Florida. At first, I said, no, I don't want to be a third party candidate. And then I accepted it, because it's not every day somebody knocks at your door and says, can you be our nominee for the United States Senate? So I was campaigning on campaign finance reform. And you stop me anytime you get a question, because these stories go on.
Well,
so
I kind of want to make sure we have to, I want to understand the 7 words and how, because, and I love your stories, and and your life is remarkable, and you've been open to trying new things, right? You've been open, like Marilyn said, and to be fearless, to put yourself into new things. Triathlon, architecture, divinity school. I mean, you've been open to live life fully. And you even said, we have setbacks in our lives. We all have setbacks. Marilyn and I are younger than you, but believe me, we have setbacks.
I'm
And I
sure.
always like to say the path is never straight. We've launched this podcast for doctoral students to encourage them, like, never give up. It's never straight, but you learn in all those little curves in the road, and what you do with your setback is really what makes you who you are. And
Mm,
so, we always trying to frame these conversations about health promotion, aging with good health. And so much of it is a growth mindset. And I think that you know, in listening to your stories, I wish we had 2 hours to listen to them all. And I
Yeah.
think maybe what we should do is have another episode where we just focus right in on the philosophy, because it was a lot to cover just in one episode. But I just think it's always about having a growth mindset. And I think that you personify that,
Yeah, I was gonna say
whether it
totally
was
depicted.
academically, physically, philosophically, you challenge yourself and you challenge other people to really think outside the box. And I
mm,
and I think, I'm jumping into like a neuroscience course. It's so hard. I don't even know if I can do it. But I think there's something physiological and at the cellular level that happens too. All
mm,
the things that you've exposed yourself to that has made you also have a very good mind, you know,
mm.
I was
excellent
just gonna say that.
cognition in aging.
Yeah.
Carolyn, go ahead.
No, like you just said it, the exposure. I feel like the exposure you had when you were young, when you saw the the elite at the tennis courts, how that
Mhm.
like expanded your mind to be like, there's more than just right here. There's more than just me.
Right.
There's more than just a space. And then obviously your determination to keep going, even when you thought you failed, you kept going. And then and you're fearless with it. So I was like, just those were the three main characteristics or whatever that I got from the story. And I'm just like so fascinated. I do want to continue to hear the story, but I know we have to stay on track. So I definitely think we'll probably have you on again.
If we
And
could go a couple minutes, I could tie it together for you if you like.
yeah, and Joe, can you please share with the 7 words that you feel are so important to
We're
your
getting
philosophy?
to that right now, and I'll
Go
show
for
you
it.
how
Go for it.
uh, um, when the Natural Law Party asked me to run for the United States Senate, I ran a campaign finance reform. We didn't get any press coverage because we were a third party, one of the third parties. I went to the national convention of the Natural Law Party, and Neil Donald Walsh is the guy that wrote those books called Conversations with God. I don't know if you're
Oh.
familiar. They were very, very popular like 20, 25 years ago. He was there because he was a big supporter of the Natural Law Party, and the Harvard PhD physicist who was the presidential candidate, I forget John's last name. And I met Neil Donald Walsh, and I had a copy of The Simple Truth with me. And the guy was a New York Times bestselling author. And so I was very humble. I said, can I give you a copy of it? So I gave him a copy of the book. He called me a week later he lives in Washington, Oregon. And he said, I read your book on the airplane on the way home. He said, when I found something he says, I speak all over the world. He said, when I found something in your book that I could use, I turned the corner of the page. He said, when I get done with your book, I turn the corner of every other page. And he said, it is the simple truth what you wrote. He says, but if I were you, because he was a big marketing guy, he says, I would change the name to 7 words that could change the world. And I would change the name to 7 words that could change the world. And he says, I want to publish the book. I'm going to publish your book. The 7 words that could change. Hampton Roads at the time was his publisher. So they published it, 7 words that can change the world. So that's originally where those 7 words came from. And more recently, this book, Taoism, I was thinking about how to promote or get out, give exposure to 7 words that could change the world, and other things that I've written. And I was lying in my bed one morning, and I also referred to this kind of thinking as the architecture of life. And I said, wait a second, the architecture of life, the architecture of life, Taol, those are the first letters of the architecture of life. Taoism, that describes what this, so what Taoism is it's a framework for living and being that's based in science and reason and ethics and sustainability to optimize life's three foundational relationships: relationship with self, relationship with others, the second relationship, and relationship with the environment or the biosphere, the sum of all ecosystems. And so relationship with self is about health, The first 2 words, be healthy. So the words are be healthy, be kind, respect the environment. Be healthy comes from relationship with self. Each one of us is like a cell in the body of humanity. The health of all of us taken together determines the health of humanity, the health of our civilization. These bodies and minds that we occupy may be the most exquisite machine on the planet. The abuse to which we subject them to, we wouldn't dream of doing to our material possessions like our car, computer, or our home.
Good point.
Yeah, but our bodies are our homes. Perhaps the reason we don't value them is we get them for free. We're born in them. By the time we realize their value, it's very late. And for many people, it's too late. So
Wow,
be healthy.
very
So
profound.
So be healthy, the person. The relationship with others is be kind. Like 10 Commandments, for example, say honor your parents, which is fine. After that, they tell us not what to do, but what not to do. Not to murder, steal, lie, commit adultery, or covet. What we need to do simply is be kind. Treat each other, our friends and neighbors, better. Stop exploiting each other. Doesn't matter how much money we have, what size home we live in, what kind of car we drive, how many academic degrees we've accumulated, what our position, our title is, what our gender, race, religion, age, national origin, sexual orientation, political affiliation is. What matters is whether or not we're kind to one another. And the third simple principle, there's 3 principles: be healthy, be kind. They're very simple, but they're very profound. The third principle is respect the environment. So be healthy, be kind, respect the environment. In every way, we are linked to the environment. We evolved from the environment. Everything comes from the environment. If we destroy the environment, we destroy ourselves. In time, the environment, natural systems will regenerate, but will be gone. Nature, which could not care less, will have eliminated us. So 3 rules, 3 principles, 7 words. When we follow them, we eliminate the vast majority of problems and suffering in our world, but we don't follow them. I could go on.
No, it's I feel like this is we are so fortunate to have you share, to trust Marilyn and I to come on our show and to share your wisdoms and your remarkable life.
Yeah.
And I love your philosophy on life. I love your perspective. You know, we always talk about having a growth mindset. So some of the things that you just talked about in terms of be healthy, I've heard Marilyn say on past episodes about honoring your body. We have one body, you know, we should take care of our bodies. She always says, you know, from the inside out. I've heard you say that on so many episodes about, you know, we have one body, people.
You gotta take good care of it. That's it.
You know, and as Joe, as you said, you know, sometimes we take better care of our physical materialistic possessions than our body. So
Yes.
I, you know, I don't know, Marilyn, how do you want it, we usually like to do strategies and whatnot, but I really wanted to, and I've been keeping on the time, so I know we went a little bit longer, but I really wanted to give you an opportunity, Joe, to talk. And I feel like what you just said at the end was just so profound and so meaningful. So I'm so glad we went longer. Marilyn, how do you want to just kind of wrap this up today, and let's talk about continuing this conversation again?
Absolutely. I think we
Okay.
should definitely have you back again. It was a pleasure, like learning from you. And now that I know we're neighbors, we're going to meet. I want to leave it with one of your principles, and I think it's the be kind. It's so funny that you talk about that. I was on the Legacy Trail going towards Fruitville, and as much as I hate graffiti, somebody had be kind, spray painted by the little stop there. And I think it is so powerful to be kind. So I think that is something that we should all remember as we're leaving the podcast today, is to be kind to each other, to ourselves, especially to the environment, like you're mentioning, because that's, we've got to leave something for our children and grandchildren. But I think let's leave with that. Let's leave with being kind.
Okay. And I just wanted to say one more thing, and then we're going to say goodbye. And Joe, don't leave us yet after Marilyn and I say goodbye to our listeners.
Okay.
Next week, we are going to have another very interesting, we hope that it works out, interesting triathlete who races a younger age group, and I think it's probably the 45 age group. Pro triathlete Amy Van Tassel is going to come on, and we're going to talk about her journey to the Ironman, and her sense of motivation, and what motivates her to be physically active, and also her academic journey as well. So we're really looking forward to that conversation. And Joe, we would love to have you back if you would like to come back and do part 2.
Sure.
Okay, no pressure. We'll give you some time to rest. Anyhow, thank you to our
your audience may have heard enough from me already.
No,
I don't think so. Thank you to our listeners for your time today, and we're always grateful, Marilyn and I, to have this opportunity to share about topics that are near and dear to our heart. So we appreciate that. All right.
Thank you once again.
All right.
Much
Bye-bye.
love.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.